Okay, so here's story number 2, which will hopefully be a little bit shorter than the last one because it's a little less involved. And this one is about some of Loki's kids, the first batch of Loki's kids who are the most important ones that he had. Um, other than Sleipnir, he doesn't really count. Um, so anyway, Loki had 2 wives. Sigyn is the most famous one because she's the one who lasted the longest, which we'll get to later. But Angerboda was his first one, and she was a giantess. And so sometimes Loki would go off to Jotunheim and hang out with Angerboda because he liked her. I think they knew each other before he became one of the Aesir anyway. Um, he had 3 kids by her, but they were really weird kids. I think, let's see, who was first? The first one was Fenrir. Fenrir was a giant wolf. I don't know how this happened. I don't know how he had such bizarre kids, but he did. So Fenrir is this giant wolf, and he was not a bad guy, I don't think. He could talk, and he was smart, and he was very, very strong, and he grew very quickly, and the gods were kind of intimidated by him. And then, because there was a prophecy that I don't know if it was just one of Loki's sons or if it was Fenrir himself that was prophesized. But either way, Fenrir was prophesized to kill Odin at the end of the world. So Odin, not a big fan of Fenrir. But he didn't really do anything bad. He was just a big wolf. And then the second one was Jormungand, who I always want to call Jorgemund, but that's not his name. It's Jormungand. And I think I'm going to call him Yor because it's easier. No, I'm not. I'm going to call him Jormungand. But anyway, he was a giant snake. And he started out as a little normal snake, and then he got to be absolutely ginormous as well. Like, huge. But he wasn't necessarily a bad guy either. Him and Thor did not get along. And it was prophesized that he and Thor would wind up killing each other in the end as well. So the gods were not a big fan of Jormungand either. And then the third was Hel. And Hel was perfectly normal from the face, like, down to her waist. She was pretty and completely normal. And then from her hips down, she was totally decaying and looked like that part of her body had been dead for a really long time. So she was kind of bizarre looking too. And so even though these guys hadn't really done anything, the Norns, who are they're basically the 3 fates. I think, who are they? Well, they're down at the well of Erd, which I showed you in that picture. I don't remember who they are, or what their names are, but anyway, they're essentially the 3 fates. And Odin went down to them because he was a little nervous about these totally bizarre children and asked them, and they told him that they were dangerous and they needed to do something about them. So the gods got together, and behind Loki's back, which rarely ever happened, they came up with a little plan. So first, so Odin went to Loki and he was like, "Look, your daughter, she's really smart and she's great, but I don't think she really fits in here. Um, so we're gonna send her to uh, to oh, well, I got this backwards. Okay, sorry, I'm trying. I didn't plan this. So, uh, so the very first thing that happened, they came up with this big plan together, and the first step was that they acted as though they were all totally shocked about Angerboda because she was a giant, and so they went and they killed her, and they took all of the kids. They took the 3 kids to Asgard with them, but they didn't want to keep them in Asgard. And Angerboda was gone, and that's where Loki lived, was in Asgard. So what were they supposed to do with the 3 kids? So anyway, Odin went to Loki and he said, she's great, but she doesn't fit in here. She looks weird. She's getting, it's bizarre. So let's send her somewhere where she is going to be able to be productive. And so they sent her to Hell, to Niflheim, and she became the ruler of Niflheim. And then they looked at Jormungand and they were like, he's too big. He doesn't fit here. Let's put him in the ocean. Like, how about we put him in the ocean and he'll be able to swim around and it'll be fun and for him and whatever. And Jormungand didn't want to go to the ocean, but they kind of tied Loki's hands figuratively, and so they wound up throwing Jormungand in the ocean. And he wrapped himself around the whole world because he was that big, and he bites his tail. He encircles the whole world, and he just kind of hangs out like that until the end of the world. So, and then they didn't know what to do with Fenrir, though, because they didn't really have any place for him to go, and they wanted to keep him close because they wanted to keep an eye on him. So he wasn't a bad guy, and Tyr, who's the god of war, but a nice guy, became kind of friends with Fenrir, and he took care of him and everything. And so the gods started this thing where they started this competition. Fenrir was kind of competitive, and they started this competition, which was all basically staged, where they would get these big chains, and they'd chain the big guys up, like Tyr and Heimdall and Thor. Thor always was really good at this, and then they'd offer Fenrir too to be in this game, where they'd chain themselves up with these huge chains, and then they'd have to break them, and whoever could break out the fastest was, the cool guy, and everybody liked them. So they started this, and Fenrir was a little hesitant to be involved in this at all, but the goddesses would all fawn over him and be like, oh, come on, you're strong enough and everything. And Tyr was doing it, and he trusted Tyr, so he was like, all right, I'll play. And of course, he was really, really strong, so he would break out of the chains very quickly, even faster than Thor, which kind of made Thor angry. And oh, my computer's freaking out. So anyway, and everyone would go nuts every time he broke out of one of the chains. They'd like freak out and be so excited and so praising him and everything. So he liked that because he was weird looking to them, and he didn't really fit in, and this was the one way that he could fit in. So they kept doing this with all these different chains, and they kept trying to find chains that would hold him. They kept going to the dwarves and going all over the place and trying to find chains that would hold him, because that was the ultimate goal, was to get him chained up so that he couldn't do anything. I'm running out of seconds here. But they couldn't find anything that was strong enough to hold him. Like, he thought it was a game, but he really could break out of every set of chains that they put on him. So then Odin went to the dwarves, who are excellent craftsmen, of course. And I'm going to have to pick this up in a second video because I'm running out.